Hello everybody, my name is Dratnos, and in today's video we're going to take a look at the Flameshaper Evoker. So this is the shared tree for Dev and Prez Evokers, and they specialize in red Dragonflight spells, makes sense, related to life energy, flame, and breath magic. They have the ability to engulf enemies or allies in Dragon Flame, causing fire breath or dream breath to detonate, dealing massive damage or healing. So let's start off by reading that top ability, which is Engulf. It's an active ability on a 20-second cooldown that does damage or heals your target, and for each of your periodic effects on the target, effectiveness is increased by 50%. Now, in terms of the amount of periodic effects you have, neither Dev nor Prez is like especially dot heavy, but there is, of course, Flame Breath dot, Dream Breath hot. Actually, Prez does have quite a few periodic effects that it can have on a target potentially as well, so you can amp up the effectiveness of this, a couple of times potentially here. Let's go take a look at the bottom node next, and then we'll do all of the other ones, because usually the bottom node matters a lot for how these things work rotationally. So the bottom node says Consume Flame, which is different for the two specs. For Dev, Engulf consumes 8 seconds of fire breath from the target, detonating it and damaging all nearby targets equal to 300% of the amount consumed, reduced beyond 5 targets. Whereas for Prez, Engulf instead consumes 8 seconds of Dream Breath from the target, detonating it and healing all nearby targets equal to 300% of the healing, right? This is an interesting effect. Fire Breath for Dev, and I believe Dream Breath for Prez as well, is this weird dot/hot that is more HPS or DPS, like more per second, but the same total amount because it's over a shorter time if you channel it for more stages, right? So if you do a full max rank fire breath, you're only going to get actually a 6-second fire breath on the target, but it's going to be more damage per second than if you did if you do a level 1 fire breath, you got a long dot that doesn't do as much damage per second. So it's going to be interesting here because I suspect that you may actually be better off doing one below a max rank fire breath to then be able to consume the full 8 seconds, but still at a high, damage per second amount, which is kind of interesting. Something they've struggled with Evoker has been coming up with ways to make different steps along the empower spells actually appealing, and they've tried a lot of different stuff, and I think they've actually done a pretty good job of making, the different empower numbers relevant, but I think this will probably be pretty good for that as well, potentially here, making it so that, maybe it's still better off to just max rank it so that it's, 300% of all your damage, except for the stuff that ticked before you press Engulf, but I'm not sure on that one. Either way, interesting little node there that is going to want to affect your sequencing, right? You're going to want to Engulf after a breath if you can. Okay, now we have a choice node here between Trailblazer, which says Hover and Deep Breath travel 50% faster, and Hover travels 50% further. There are situations here where you actually don't want your Deep Breath to travel faster. Like if you think about Mythic Razageth, you would press Deep Breath, and while you were Deep Breathing, you were safe, right? And if you actually finish your Deep Breath faster, you would be getting pushed back by the winds sooner. So that's an interesting, pretty niche case. Generally, you're just happier for it to be done sooner. And Hover traveling further and faster, also probably nice. I often find myself pressing Hover on my Evoker without moving. Like, even if I want to move somewhere, I don't want the dash always. So sometimes I just stop moving, press Hover, and then keep moving. And that is a little bit more controlled. And I suspect that if you take Trailblazer, you're going to probably do that more often. But the times where you do want the dash, it's going to be a potent dash, which is cool. The other option is Shape of Flame, which says Tail Swipe and Wing Buffet. Scorch enemies and blind them with ash, causing their next attack within 4 seconds to miss. That's certainly something as well. Sending this on sending either of these abilities in M+ on a pack of mobs that are just beating up your tank is likely going to heal them for this expansion. It would be several million health, right? If you cause 7 enemies to each miss their next attack, that's a lot of value potentially. So reasonable amount of defensive value there for helping a tank in M+. Meaningless for the most part in raid. Pretty hard for this to matter too much ever in raid. And even in M+, maybe you just take Trailblazer, I'm not sure. Traveling Flame is the next one that says Engulf causes Fire Breath or Dream Breath, but only if you're Prez, obviously, to spread to a nearby target. If no valid targets are present, its duration is refreshed. Now, I wonder how that's going to interact with Consume Flame here, because, if you're on, are we going to reapply the same dot after consuming it, right? Like, say you apply a 6-second max rank Fire Breath, then 2 seconds later you cast your Engulf, so now you have 4 seconds of Fire Breath left. Does that get detonated, and then a new 6-second full damage Fire Breath applied if there's no enemies nearby? Or if there are enemies nearby, does a full 6-second Fire Breath spread to one of them? Which is a little weird, because your breaths are usually going to hit everything anyways, especially your Fire Breaths. Dream Breath, I know sometimes DPS like to dodge those, so that'll be nice to spread it around. But yeah, interesting effect there. I mean, potentially quite a lot of value. That extra, if you can get full value on an extra free Fire Breath dot on a target, that's a lot of damage. And Fire Breath dots ticking, I think, proc some stuff for dev as well. So that could be pretty good. Enkindle is next, which says Essence abilities are enhanced with Flame, dealing 20% of healing or damage as fire over 8 seconds. So Essence abilities dealing 20% more, but as a dot or a hot. The hot side of things, that's not... Usually, I guess you'd prefer the upfront healing, but sometimes having a hot would be nice. The damage being a dot instead of upfront is actually probably really nice for dev, because dev has some threat issues, so spreading out a little bit of their opening bursts, even, like, if this was direct damage upfront, that would make that even a little bit worse. And this is a synergy, of course, with the periodic effects increasing the effectiveness of your Engulf, right? So you're going to want to make sure that you cast an Essence ability on your target before you Engulf them within the 8 seconds prior to that Engulf, which... yeah, cool. And, and it's not that big of a deal. Like, one of the nice things about this is it's not that big of a deal if you screw that up, right? You're missing a little bit of value on your Engulf. It's not the end of the world or anything like that. It's not like you've bricked your rotation, but it is an optimization you can make, which I like. These hero trees, especially the ones they've revealed this week, seem like they've mostly been doing a really good job of offering you little rotational incentives without, destroying your damage if you screw them up. Conduit of Flame is up next. Crit strike against targets above 50% health increased by 10%. Very good for dev, right? That's effectively 5% more crit over the course of a fight. Obviously, it's a little bit less value if there's an execute phase that's valuable, which historically execute damage is better than, high health damage, right? I look at a fight like Mythic Fire Act, damage from 100 to 70% on that fight isn't worth too much, right? Like, you would be much happier to have damage below 70% than above 70% on that encounter, so effects like Conduit of Flame lose value. But some fights, like Scale Commander Sarkarath, it's just good the whole way through, so you're just getting full value out of this. Now, for Prez, critting more on high health targets is... that's a pretty unfortunate effect for a healer, because if you're healing somebody above 50% health, you don't need to crit them. The people you need to crit are the people you're healing below 50% health, right? So, not especially synergistic there. Burning Adrenaline is next, which says, Engulf quickens your pulse, reducing the cast time of your next spell by 30%, stacks up to 2 charges. So you can get cast time reduction after casting your Engulf, which, cool. Nice little, makes the rotation feel a little better. Over here we have either Fan the Flames, which says, Engulf reignites Enkindle, extending its duration and effectiveness by 25%. Okay. Or Expanded Lungs, which says Fire Breath or Dream Breath, or both. I guess if you're Prez, it's both. If you're Dev, it's only Fire Breath, obviously. 20% more damage or healing over time. Okay. I suspect that is going to be the main one that's probably better, but maybe because I feel like you're just going to be able to, you're going to be able to keep Enkindle up if you're playing well. So you're only really going to be getting the effectiveness benefit rather than the duration extension benefit on Fan the Flames, whereas more value on the Fire Breath and Dream Breath periodic ticks is going to be a lot, because, that's going to amp Consume Flame. That's going to amp your Traveling Flame, right? That's going to do all of that stuff for it. So I think Expanded Lungs is probably the more powerful one here. Titanic Precision is up next, which says, Living Flame, Reversion, and Azure Strike crits have a 100% increased chance to trigger Essence Burst. So a little bit of crit scaling here. It's going to mean that this spec will or this hero talent tree has some benefits later in an expansion as you start getting more and more crit as well. But crit, pretty good stat for dev as well. I'm not sure how good it is for Prez. I assume it's not bad. But yeah, cool. Engulf is up. Well, Okay, I guess they just called this node Engulf. I suspect that's not going to stay named Engulf, but Engulf gains 1 additional charge and deals 20% increased damage and healing. So that's why this stacks up to 2 on Burning Adrenaline, is so you don't get screwed if you just press your 2 Engulfs back to back. But I suspect you're not going to want to press them back to back because you're going to want to make sure. Well, I was going to say that you're going to want to make sure you always have a breath on the target, and so you don't want to consume it and then press another Engulf. But I guess if it's single target and the duration gets refreshed, you can just do that and you'll be fine. So cool. All right. Anytime you add an additional charge to something as well, it's a huge quality of life increase because you're no longer hemorrhaging damage if you don't press it on CD, right? If you have a 2-charge, 20-second recharge ability, and over the course of a 2-minute fight, you leave it off cooldown, as long as you don't ever let it hit 2 charges, you're never missing a cast. But if it only has 1 charge and you spend like 15, 20 seconds total over 2 minutes with it off cooldown, you're going to lose a cast over that time span, and that is painful and often leads to rotations that feel a lot more rigid as a result because you really can't afford to let that sit off CD. So that's going to be nice for making Engulf feel good to play. Over here we have Life Cinders. Renewing Blaze also applies to 1 nearby injured ally when cast. This is one of those effects that's like generally not going to do too much, right? Because like you just press this unplanned when you're pressing your defensive and raid, like, oh, somebody's going to get Renewing Blaze. Like they'll be like, oh, cool. And your healers are going to have to do a little bit less healing than them maybe. But if you can use this in a planned fashion, like if you can use this, I suspect that there will be a lot of value in standing next to your tank in M+, because presumably this will be closest nearby injured ally, and then pressing Renewing Blaze. Like Renewing Blaze on a tank is a extremely potent defensive cooldown if you're just getting beat up. So I think this is one of those effects that has a lot of potential if used mindfully, but also is going to get next to no value if you're just kind of pressing Renewing Blaze and not really thinking about it. I mean, it's not going to get no value, but it's going to get a lot less value than if you're trying to cheese it. Like, I think this is a very cheesable effect, potentially here. Other option here is Draconic Instinct. Your wounds have a small chance to cauterize, healing you for 30% of damage taken. Occurs more often from attacks that deal high damage. So this is just going to be the default option that you'll take if you don't have something cheesy to do with Life Cinders, because you're going to heal yourself for some of the damage that you take, and it's going to happen more often on big, high damage attacks, which it's a little bit counterintuitive because, you know, it's nice to, if something is going to hit you for 90% of your health, it's nice if it procs more often to heal you, especially if this would save you from dying, which I assume this won't work. Like, I assume if something would kill you and then this would have procced and would have brought you back up to above 0, I assume you're still going to die because it's healing, it's not damage prevention or anything like that. But yeah, you'd kind of rather have this proc on medium-sized attacks because, you know, the way you die to something that this could heal you from is if you're taking multiple hits, and, you know, occurring more often from attacks that deal high damage means it's a little bit less likely to proc off of attacks that comprise multiple hit combos. But either way, whatever the proc rate is here, this is likely to be providing a decent amount of value. It's likely to make you feel somewhat tankier on, you know, on just raid fights. There's so many damage instances that apply to you that healing any combination of them kind of for free is going to be nice. Even if it's only 30% of that damage taken, you're going to, you know, this is going to do a solid chunk of your HPS to yourself and make you feel a little bit more durable, you know, a little bit more like those warlocks and stuff that their health bar is just kind of always fine. This obviously isn't going to bridge that gap entirely, but is a decent amount of passive tankiness. All right, that is the Flameshaper tree. Hope you've enjoyed this video. I think this tree looks pretty cool. Like, I haven't played too much dev this season, but it seems like a reasonably fun little, not too complicated extra addition to be made to the dev rotation. I play basically no preservation, I'm afraid. I need to do that so that I can make more informed videos about it. But I don't have a good bead on whether this looks like it would be fun for the preservation playstyle. But for dev, at least, it seems like I would be reasonably excited about playing this tree. Seems like it has some potential to do some pretty big bursts. I guess it seems like it has a reasonable potential of me getting auto-attacked by every mob in the pack when I do my opener and consume flame twice with my 2 Engulf, so maybe that's going to be stinky, but, you know, We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Just taunt, right? Only play with tanks with AoE taunts. That's going to be the, I mean, that's already the meta if you're a dev evoker. So hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.